kind of a cool, foggy morning here in southern Appalachia. Matt and I are out and about this morning trying to see what we can get done in the garden. We've picked beans. We picked rattlesnake beans, got about 4 gallons, so that's great. We usually never have beans this late, so we're really tickled with that. Right now we're tackling the tomatoes, those late tomatoes that we planted. Matt teased me that we were, making a huge mistake by even trying, that they would not work. Well, it's worked better than either one of us could imagine. And the tomatoes have grown so large that the small stakes that we had, because we just wasn't expecting them to do anything, they've grown past those and just fell over like about 3 times. So Matt's finally dug in this morning and going to try to fix something to get them up off the ground, help them get more air circulation going around them. Some of the ones, as I was trimming back underneath where they had fallen on top of each other, had been eaten. Something had eaten the tomato, so I just had to cut those off. So maybe this airflow will really help, since it's worked better than either one of us thought. And if we do it next year, we'll give more thought to where we're putting them. We probably should have tore out some tomatoes that was kind of on their way out. The cattle, where we have them planted by the cattle panels, which is really easy just to grow them up those. We probably should have done that, because while these are still growing, the tomatoes in the front garden down below the house, one whole row of them has already been pulled out because they've died out. So if we had pulled them out a little bit earlier and put these down there, we could have just trained them up the trellis, up the cattle panel as they went, instead of letting them fall over on top of each other. One of my goals for this summer was, we have 2 green stalk planters, and last year by the end of the summer I had got some strawberry plants from one of my friends, and I'd kind of, as they grow more plants, filled that whole green stalk with strawberries. So I thought, well, I want to do that. They did so good over the winter and everything, and then the spring took right off where I'd had them planted last year. I thought I want to do that in this year. So I bought strawberry plants and planted them, but they pretty much all died. So I've been taking some of the ones from the other green stalk as they continue to produce new plants and moving them over here. And you can see right here, this one has actually even fruited out. So it's got, I don't know, 4 or 5 little strawberries right there. 1 or 2 of them have gotten ripe. I ate one of them, and then yesterday or day before there was another one. I told Katie she could eat it. But so I'm hoping that as I continue to do that, I'll have this one completely covered in strawberries too. And a few videos back I mentioned that I started some strawberry plants from those other green stalk in some of those flat, longish grow bags that my friend shared with me, and they're all living and they're all doing good. So hopefully they will produce and kind of cover those little, it's just probably about that big and kind of a rectangular shape, that deep and kind of rectangular shape, but hopefully they'll cover that by next year and I'll have strawberries in there. A lot of people grow their strawberries in kiddie pools, like little plastic swimming pools. They say that works very well to keep the weeds and stuff out of them, but also to give them, place to kind of where the dirt's, whatever dirt you've used is really good dirt, and it kind of gives them a place to spread on their own. Well, the tomatoes look a lot better. That's something we've should have done already, but both of us, like I said, were surprised that they actually took off and grew as well as they did. So now that's better, and hopefully the tomatoes that are on it will actually start turning red now, and we won't have any more problems like the ones that we're getting to eat that were kind of smothered down underneath. Maybe, we'll see. So now we're going to tackle these grow bags here on this side of the greenhouse. Is where we had a lot of the tomatoes. The past 2 years we've done that. It's kind of the ones we're trying out to see if there's any that we really can't live without that will start growing again. So that's where we had those, and you can see they've died out. They just need to be pulled up and cleaned out. What I might do with those grow bags, not today probably, but in the next few weeks, in the coming weeks, I might plant some beets or some carrots or some lettuce or some kind of green, some kind of something that could do good in the winter for my fall garden. I might come back and plant in these. Sort of makes sense since they're already, the dirt's already there, it's already prepared. Once we pull the rest of the tomato plants out, and you could kind of turn it over once or twice, add a little bit more compost if you wanted to. and then plant since it's already kind of there sitting there. And this part of the yard during the winter we'll get some sunshine, and it's kind of sheltered right there by the greenhouse, even though there's no overhang or anything like that. But just being close to something sometimes shelters stuff enough to give it that little extra amount of warmth that it needs to do well. This is some of the radishes that I've planted, so they're beginning to get big enough to actually pull up. You can see that one's kind of not really a big one though, but the leaves are really big. Here's another one. This is kind of those long, narrow radishes instead of the small, round ones. So I can harvest some of these today. Matt and the girls don't actually care very much for them. That one looks funny. I can't remember what kind I planted. But you can see they're all getting big enough to eat for sure. That's a pretty one. I like this kind better, but I did have some of those long, I don't know if they're called breakfast radishes or what they're called. I don't like them. Maybe French radishes, I don't know. I like the round ones better. Maybe, and that might just be because that's what I was most used to when I was growing up. The 3 containers on this end, we had potatoes in them, so they've died back. Matt's going to see if we've actually got any potatoes down in there, see what he can find. Oh yeah, there's some. We dug the last potatoes out of the grow bags that we did earlier in the summer. That we planted them at 2 different times. That's why these took a little bit longer. A lot of people said, well, you should just empty the container out on a tarp and then dig through it that way. And you sure could do that. That would be great if you wanted to do that. But for us, it just seems like getting the tarp and pouring it out and going through them is more work than just digging through them with your hands. And there's something exciting about digging them, ain't there, Matt?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a treasure hunt. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people do it that way, though, and that does work really well if you want to do that. We'd have to first find a tarp, which would be probably take 2 hours if we could find one that wasn't in use somewhere. But everybody's just got to figure out their own way of what works best, and that does work really well if you want to do it that way. It's really amazing how many potatoes you can grow in containers.
So not bad for.
No, that's probably 10 pounds maybe.
5.
5 pounds. There's a few on the bottom of that one, little baby ones. Those will be good roasted. Put in some green beans, those green beans we picked earlier. That and some cornbread would be a meal. Somebody recently left a comment, said something, I can't remember even what video it was on, it was one of the older ones, but it said, I think these people eat cornbread with every meal.
We far off.
Yeah, we do eat a lot of cornbread.
That's a good one.
That's a big one, yeah.
It's been a while since I've had a suntan sickle.
It's not a suntan sickle. We need our suntan sickles today, though.
Yeah.
Me and Matt both are feeling puny. We've had the epizooty. Did you ever hear that when you was little? Mm-hmm. Epizooty or the creeping crud. Palpetus of the punk. That's my favorite one. Mm-hmm. So we've just had a bad cold, but we're feeling weak and trembly, even with what we done today, which was not much. Mm-hmm. It does feel good to get outside, though, in the sunshine, the fresh air. Now we need to go take a nap, though.
Yeah.
There's still a lot growing in the garden, even though this is coming up on the end of September. September's over halfway over, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've never picked beautiful beans like we just picked in September. And hopefully now that we got the tomatoes situated, we'll have some ripe tomatoes between now and the first frost. Maybe.
If not, we can pick them green and fry them.
Yeah.
Didn't have none of them all year, really.
Mm-mm. I don't do you a good service on them because I don't like them, so I don't cook them, and you love them.
Gosh, I like them.
I know. It's not that I don't like them exactly, I just like them ripe better, so then I'm like, well, you're kind of wasting your ripe tomato by doing it green. But we have enough, I should do it. Poor Matt. How long do you think it is till frost?
Probably a month.
It's about the average day in there.
It used to frost a little earlier than that way back yonder, but it's usually now it's after mid-October normally before we get any frost. And usually even like the last week or so of October. Seems like in the last few years.
Yeah. Although we have had even snow on Halloween before.
Mm-hmm.
More than once.
Mm-hmm.
Not much snow, but a little snow, at least a little skiff of snow.
At least the grass has slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a week and a half and it's not all that bad, really.
No. It does need mowing, but it's not terrible.
I sure ain't felt like mowing.
No, we've been too weak to mow, so we'll have to wait another couple of days. Even having something as minor as a bad cold makes you really appreciate good health.
Yeah.
Because we're used to just getting up and hitting the floor and hitting it.
Mm-hmm.
And fighting fire like we're fighting fire all day, everything, all the different jobs we do and different things we do, and then when you kind of get up and hit a brick wall, you're like, what? Wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah, I ain't done nothing in 4 or 5 days, not nothing.
Now, this is the most exertion that we've had, and I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad we got it done.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be good for us to be out in the fresh air and the sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it'll make our afternoon nap even better.
You taking a nap, are you?
I might need to. That's funny when you're little, which I used to tell Corey and Katie this, of course they were too little to understand, but you hate it when somebody tries to make you take a nap, and then when you're an adult, you're like, please, would you just make me take a nap every day? That'd be so great.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
they won't let you because
Yeah.
they'll be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, I figure at our house the only way to take a nap is to go to the back bedroom, shut the door, and lock it, and maybe you'll get it out. Get your nap out.
Yeah,
But
that don't even work.
that don't always work.
The only way I can get one is get a hammock and go up a mountain.
Yeah. You've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the best sleep there is outside, to me.
Yeah, it is something about the air.
And listening to the creek. And
makes you sleep good.
Just the noise of the woods, it makes you go to sleep, or it does me.
Right, I've noticed that about little kids. If they're outside playing, it seems like they sleep so much better that night than if they'd just been indoors all day. Our bodies really need that fresh air and movement and sunshine and all that.
What made you spend all your time indoors?
Can hear the bees. They're hurrying. They know that impending doom, that frost is coming, whether it's the end of October or earlier than that.
They're real busy.
Yeah. You notice some of them's moving slow, though. I seen a bumblebee over on one of the zinnias, and it was just barely moving.
It's 'cause it's been cool this morning.
Yeah.
It was like 52 this morning.
Well, I'm glad that we pushed through and got the tomatoes done and picked the beans. It was bugging me. I knew we needed to pick them, and even though we'd rather have been piled up on the couch, I'm glad we pushed through and got that done, ain't you? There's tomatoes. Every time I walked by them, I was like, oh, something needs to be done. And so basically, Matt put 3 rebar stakes in the ground, and then attached a wire, 2 rungs of wire to it, and then we used our little plastic clips to clip the tomatoes to it, so that it looks way better. And I have to give a lot more airflow, circulation to them. The bees have found Matt. Don't take them long. They adore him. They love him. Love Matt. It's because you're so sweet.
I think they just like to irritate me.
No, it's because you're sweet.
You know what we should have done?
What?
As soon as we started getting sick, should have got a pound of bacon and a sack of coffee and went up the creek and stayed for 4 or 5 nights, because that seems to work well.
And for all the westerns?
On every western I ever read, you know.
Give them a rasher of bacon and a...
Yeah, they get shot 15 times and they hole up in a cave, and as long as they got bacon and coffee,
they get better.
They get better.
Yeah, yeah, we should have done that.
Yeah. All those westerns are like that.
Yeah, they all are.
I mean, they're good.
Yeah, I love them. And it's one thing we've been doing. We've watched, I don't know how many Gunsmoke movies.
Right.
One time years ago when Corey and Katie was just babies, I mean literally like infant babies, maybe that was their first, I guess like in their first November, they've been born in September. And Matt and Daddy worked together in those days, and they got the flu somewhere. I don't even remember. I never got it, thankfully, and I don't think Granny or nobody did either. I think it was just you and him.
Me and him.
But Matt and him both were so sick, and they both got out of their minds, like their fever was so high. So like Katie and Corey were new babies, and I was a new mother, and still trying to figure all that out. And probably they could, looking back, I can see they could probably sense that I was worried about Matt. I'd never seen him sick like that, never. So I was really worried, because he was just like out of his mind, you know, and I didn't really know what to do. And I had the babies I had to take care of. I didn't want to invite nobody to come help because I didn't want them to get sick. And Katie had a little crying spell that I couldn't get her to quit crying. And I remember Matt wanted to put her in the stroller and push her around the basement. And I was like, you can't even stand up. You can't do this. But it was like I couldn't get him to understand that he couldn't do that. Anyway, so I was worried about him. But then Pap had it too, of course, at his house. And that was when he was out of his mind like that fighting. And it was because he was dreaming that he was up the creek. He was freezing. You know how you freeze if you're sick. And he had finally found a place to get warm under a creek bank. And what was it? Something was after him, a coyote or a wolf or something, trying to get his spot. And so he was like striking out at it, trying to hit it, but of course it really wasn't there, you know. But he wasn't going to give up his warm spot he had fought so hard to find. So, but yeah, if we just had the bacon and the coffee, we could have struck out and got under the creek bank like Pap and whooped it out in a day or two.
Yep.
Yeah. Crows have been going crazy this morning, but what's that? Squirrels fussing at each other, or fussing at us for being in their in their area.
That might be his little house right there.
Yeah, we're sitting right under our little birch tree at the corner of the house here. A squirrel decided to build a nest in it. It kind of seems like a weird place, but
yeah,
because it's not very high off the ground.
No.
Yeah.
About 12 feet high.
About 12 feet high. Maybe
but he's proud of it.
Yeah, maybe we're in his. Might be him fussing at us, or her.
Probably her for doing a lot of fussing.
Yeah. Well, even though we didn't make much of a showing today in the garden, we hope you enjoyed coming along with us as we finally did get the tomatoes put up. That's just a relief. And finally picked the beans. I was worrying about those beans. I knew they could have been stood to have been picked a day or two ago, but we just didn't feel like it. So we hope you enjoyed that. We hope, as always, you'll continue to drop back by and help us celebrate Appalachia.